Greetings! I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today I am finally getting around to building the 28mm scale Jagdpanzer 38T or Hetzer in plastic by Rubicon models. And I've got to say, I'm pretty excited about this. You can see right away that, as per usual for Rubicon models, the box is quite nice. There's an image of a Hetzer hetzing, and on the back there's an illustration of a Hetzer with some suggested Vallejo paint colours, an image of the included decal sheet, and a few paragraphs about the Hetzer, its history, and roles in the war. I know some people get rather upset when the Jagdpanzer 38T is referred to as a Hetzer, but I like the name Hetzer. I think it really suits the vehicle. After all, what else would you call a machine that hetzers so much? Hetzer. Anyway, let's have a look at what's inside the box. This kit comprises 3 sprues, individually wrapped in plastic. This is good for that rare occasion where a part comes off the sprue in the box. The first sprue here holds the upper and lower hull parts. These are used by all variants of the Hetzer, and I have to say, I really like the way the upper hull looks. It's really crisp and neat looking and well detailed. I like that it's a single part, rather than having to join 4 or maybe 5 parts together neatly. The flash on the drive sprocket here is about the only flaw I saw in the casting of this kit. There are of course still mould lines that will need to be cleaned up, but they're barely noticeable. The parts are all neat and well moulded, and nothing was missing. And in typical Rubicon fashion, there are a lot of parts on these sprues. You need all of those parts when you have so many options. This kit can be used to build early, mid or late war Hetzers, and you can also build a Flammpanzer, which is like a Hetzer except it flams panzer. Because of all of those options, there are many different wheels, gun mantlets, hatches and armoured plates and such to choose from, and 2 almost complete track sets. I can think of some fun things to attach those tracks to. All of these parts look very nice indeed, and my bits box will greatly appreciate the ones I don't use. Of course, being a Rubicon kit, a very good instruction leaflet is included. Pay attention to this, especially the text in red. It's red for a reason. The differences between the variants you can make with this kit can be a little bit subtle, but these instructions are very helpful in getting all the right bits in the right places. And of course, there's a sheet of decals. As usual, these come in a protective plastic bag, just in case you spill your paint water on them or something. There's a good variety for markings, including German and Czech markings, as well as some for the Russian Liberation Army. Let's start putting this thing together. I begin with the tracks. We need to add idler wheels to this part. I've decided that I want a mid-war Hetzer, so I consult the instructions to determine the correct wheels to use. Of course, there are probably a few examples of vehicles with early war wheels being used later in the war and things like that. You know, spares salvaged from older vehicles, things like that. They do happen. But in this case, we're following the instructions. The wheel parts are keyed both so they fit to each other in a certain way and so they only properly fit on the track set one way. This does have potential to be a little bit fiddly, but it goes together nicely in the end. Next, we attach the sides of the lower hull. This is quite easy due to the guide bar things and their corresponding slots. The hull side part should not go all the way to the end of the hull. It should look like this. The towing brackets will go here in this gap later. Once the side is on, we can attach the leaf spring wheel holdy bits for the road wheels. Yes, that is the technical term. These go into place easily, like so. The parts are all numbered differently, but they look identical, so I don't know if putting them on in the correct order as the instructions show matters, but I've done it that way anyway. Next, the final drive casings can be glued on. These are keyed to ensure proper fit, though it should be pretty easy to see if you've glued one on the wrong way. Following the instructions should prevent that anyway. I then glue the track sets into place. There are plenty of pins with corresponding holes to help you obtain an excellent fit with this quite easily. It goes together quite nicely. The suspension is relatively detailed for a wargaming miniature, and I like it. Next, glue this vision device into the hull top. You can tell which way it should face, with the flat part facing forward. Even if you didn't realise that, the part is keyed so it's hard to put it in wrong. This should obviously be done before gluing the whole top to the lower hull. The instructions state this in red, so you know it's important. Then, it's time to join the 2 halves of the hull together. At the risk of sounding repetitious, this is very easy to do. I applied pressure to the parts, though they weren't trying to come apart like some models, particularly hull parts, do, but I wanted to be sure. I just wanted to point out how well the hull parts join at the front of the hull here. This is an area that is often problematic on many models in various scales. Not so here. This is a really nice gap-free join. Thumbs up. Then, the drive sprockets can go here, right where you would expect them to go. These are keyed to ensure correct fit, obviously with the teeth facing away from the track. I used a knife to gently press them all the way into place. They should definitely not be resting against the leading road wheel. I then glue on the rear hull plates. Be sure to check the instructions and choose the appropriate part for the variant you want to build. This part just kind of slots right into place. I'm not sure if there's a particular order in which you should attach these parts, though the way I did it worked well enough. The result is really neat looking. It almost looks as though it was one part. It's not quite as neat on the bottom, but that won't normally be seen anyway. Next come the towing brackets. These are pretty easy to get into place. They should go on with the little protrusion facing downwards. You could use a knife or other tool to manipulate them into place if you can't get your fingers past the mudguard part. The commander's hatch is the next thing I add. At least I think it's the commander's hatch. I'm modelling this open, which is slightly more fiddly than simply having it closed. I use my knife and fingers to shunt it around, and eventually I'm satisfied with it. I'm not sure how far forward it should really sit when open, but this is fine for me. The reason I want the hatch open is so I can add the binoculars. You need binoculars if you want to hetz things at range. The binoculars slot nicely into the hole inside the hatch. The big flat piece of plastic these are mounted to will need to be painted black to represent an open hatch, of course. It's only a little bit more work for what I think is a pretty cool little detail. I then add the other hatch. This is made up of 2 parts and is very easy to install. I'm a dingus and wasn't paying attention, so I put this together out of shot, but it still looks good when finished. Next, I glued in the gun shield for the machine gun. This is just as simple as it looks. The gun shield is a bit redundant without a gun, so I glue that in next. This is quite simple to position and it looks very machine gunny. Good for mowing down pesky infantry that seek to halt your hetzing. Now for some tools. The shovel and I guess it's a gun cleaning rod go on the right rear side of the hull. There's nothing to guide this, you just kind of guess and glue it right onto the side of the hull. Getting it straight and neat looking is up to you. I think I got it on pretty neatly. Next comes the jack. There's a couple of guide holes for this, so it goes into place easily. Looking good. I then add the spare track links. In addition to the long one on the center of the upper rear hull, the mid-production Hetzer that I'm building gets 2 sets of spare track links on the lower rear plate. These are very easy to install using the convenient pins and holes. They should all be glued on with the long end of the retaining bar on the upper end. I then add the toolbox cover. Mid and late Hetzers have this one with the holes, though if you really wanted to, you could use the other one. There's probably at least one example of a late Hetzer with the old style toolbox cover. Next, I glue the 2 halves of the muffler together. This is pretty simple and there's a very gentle keying on the parts. Then, I figure why not glue the exhaust system on. It goes into the opening on the rear hull like so. It looks pretty good from these angles, but if you look at it from the rear, there is a bit of a gap on the muffler. I'll have to fix that before painting. Now to add some detail to the front of the Hetzer, starting with the front towing brackets. Again, choose the correct part for your variant. These slot into place very easily and I think they look pretty good. I then glue in the no-tech light. This does fit nicely, though you might have to fiddle with it a bit to get it aligned properly. Then the driver's vision device cover thing. There is an open and closed version of this. I've chosen to use the closed one. And then the jacking block. This goes on the front right mudguard here. It looks a bit thinner than most jacking blocks seem to be, but it looks good anyway. Next, I attach the track guards. These could be left off if you would prefer, but I like them on. There are guides to help position this part like so, which makes it very easy to install these. Though I did have one issue. The bracket on the rear of the track guard part kind of interfered with the shovel handle. If I had those tools on any lower, the track guard would not have fit at all. You should probably keep that in mind when attaching the tools. Other than that, there was no problem with the track guards and I think they look pretty good. Now for the gun. I drilled out the end of my gun, though I didn't film it. Other than having a flat end which I fixed, the gun looks pretty good. There was almost no mold line down the barrel. I then glued the gun into the bulge? What is that part called? It's not the mantlet. Anyway, the gun goes in here, and then that assembly can be glued onto the front of the hull. The location for this should be obvious. Position the gun so it's pointing where you want it, and then slide the mantlet on. I tried to get it on fairly level and neatly, and I think I managed that fairly well. There should be a gap under the mantlet, though I'm not really sure how realistic it looks under there on this model, but it's barely noticeable unless you're trying to look under there anyway. And that's it! I have completed the 28mm scale plastic Hetzer from Rubicon models. Let's compare it with the resin and metal Hetzer from Warlord games, which I made a video about a while ago. You can see right away that these models are quite different, and I don't think I need to say which one I like more. It's the Rubicon one, in case it wasn't obvious. And I don't think I'm alone there. I don't really feel like pointing out all the differences because, well, look at them. I think it's sufficient to say that the Rubicon model is much better than the Warlord version. To be fair, after I made the video about the Warlord Hetzer, someone commented saying that theirs was of much better quality, and I think maybe I got a very old casting that had been sitting on the shelf for years or something like that. I don't feel much desire to buy another one just to test that out. However, if Warlord were to release a plastic Hetzer, I would definitely get one. I really like this model. It was a joy to build, and it went together really quickly, easily, and with a minimum of issues. In fact, the only issue I really had was with the right track guard bracket interfering with the tools on the hull, which was a pretty minor issue. The mold lines were minimal and easily removed, and all the parts went together really easily and neatly. This has been the most enjoyable build I've done in recent memory. The end result is really good looking, and I think a pretty accurate representation of a Hetzer. I really like how many variants of the Hetzer you can build from this kit. I guess that's common to pretty much all of Rubicon's kits. They're really good about providing plenty of options, and I like that. I guess I say this about most of the kits I build, but I think this is going to look amazing once it's painted. I'm actually thinking of painting it pretty soon. The only trouble I'm really having is deciding what camo scheme I want to do on it, but I will decide that eventually. So I guess keep an eye out for a Hetzer painting video in the next few months. What do you guys think about this model? How do you think I should paint it? Do you know of any other good Hetzer kits in 28mm scale, or any other scale I guess? Let me know in the comments section below. And of course, if you have any other questions or comments, they can also go in the comments section. Also, don't forget to do all of the YouTubey things like clicking like if you liked the video, subscribing and sharing and so forth. If you really like the things I make, please consider helping to support the channel via Patreon. Patrons get to see my videos a little bit earlier than everybody else, in addition to some patron-only bonus content. If you want to check that out, there's a link in the description and on screen now. As always, I shall return soon, so until then, happy modelling and thanks for watching. Farewell.